Hello. Good morning. I saw your face for a quick second, Charlie, and then you went off. So sad. Hi. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the call. So excited to have Colton on here. I know many of you know who he is, so it's going to be an awesome message. I see him jumping on right now. Hi, Colton.
Hey.
How are you?
Wonderful. How are you doing?
I am great. Can't wait to get started and rock and roll here. It's going to be an awesome call. I sent you the questions. I don't know if you saw in your email, but I sent them to you like 30 minutes ago. And they're exactly what I asked you yesterday. So
yeah, I got it. That's
cool.
Good.
Sweet. Sounds good. Well, we'll get started here in 2 minutes. I'm sure people will be jumping on as they can. They sent out a massive text message to everybody, letting them know that if they can be on the call, they should be on the call. All right. I'm going to just mute myself for a little bit here before we get started.
Morning, Shelby.
Good morning. I don't know who just said good morning. I think it was Joelle.
Yes.
I can tell it was your voice. We're going to get started in 1 minute. 1 minute here. I've noticed my computer is a little bit behind my phone, so once my computer turns to 9 o'clock, we'll get started. I'm very excited to have Colton Horn on today's call. It's going to be great. We'll get started here in just a few, in actually 7 seconds. So my computer will turn to 9 o'clock. All right, we are going to get started. As always, everybody, I'm very, very excited to have our special guest on the call with us today. And I'm also very excited to see, a decent amount of you jumping on. I know it's in the craziness of summer. Tuesday mornings aren't always the most convenient time to jump on calls, so I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to learn, invest in yourself, and to make some shifts in your business moving forward. I've said this before, but the summer is only halfway done. So there's still a lot coming your way. For some of you that might feel like, oh my gosh, there's a lot coming my way. For others, it might be like, yes, there's still so much coming my way. And what I challenge you to do throughout this call is to change your perspective into the space of excitement, not of dread. Colton's going to share a lot of the things that he has done in preparation for this summer to really have the summer he's having. But he's also going to share tips as to how you can get into that mindset now. Because we still have, the rest of June, all of July, and all of August to really make an impact on your business. And then including September for your own personal sales. That's a big deal, guys. And there's a lot of really exciting things coming your way, like I said before. So before we introduce Colton and get into the question and answer section of today's call, I did want to cover a few housekeeping items. As always, branch office hours are tomorrow from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Jump on at any time during that 3-hour window, and I will be on ready to help you out wherever I can. You also might have seen in the Branch ImPACT Facebook page that I opened up my schedule for additional one-on-one coaching calls this week. Because I'm not traveling to any different territories this week, I have a decent amount of time on Thursday and Friday to provide coaching calls for anyone that's looking for some one-on-one attention. These calls will be at max 30 minutes, but if they only need to be 5 or 10, that's fine as well. They'll be over Zoom. If you signed up for a coaching call, you should have gotten an email from Calendly with the Zoom ID. I also should have sent you a Facebook message with that information in it as well. If you sign up for a call but did not get my Facebook message, please reach out to me and I'll make sure to send you over all the information. Next Tuesday, we will have a Branch ImPACT call that will be all about prepping for the upcoming SC2 push. I have seen offices really, really take off during the SC2 push because of a couple simple things that they've done with their team and points of awareness that they've brought to their team. So if you're interested in having a 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100K SC2 push and above, that call will definitely be the call for you. All that being said, I'm really, really happy and excited to have the #1 branch manager on our call this morning. Colton Horn is a senior branch manager out in Evanston, Illinois. He is part of the North Star Division?
Lakeshore.
Lakeshore Division. Okay, Lakeshore with Danny Lewis in Chicago or outside of Chicago. I got a chance to visit Colton last summer when he was doing really well, and it's something really special when you see a leader in action. And Colton is definitely someone who I admire in our business. I see him being a leader for years to come, even if he decides to step away from Cutco. I think what he's learning, what he's growing, and what he's developing in his team is something that we can really take and apply to branches all over the country moving forward. So with all of that being said, I would like to introduce Colton Horn, the branch manager of Evanston, Illinois. Thank you so much, Colton, for being here. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you. Me too. I love being on these calls because there's new faces and friendly faces.
It's awesome.
I'm excited.
Good. So I know we spoke yesterday, just kind of in preparation for this call. And the first question I asked you yesterday is going to be the exact same question I asked you today. So I live near a hospital, so sometimes you hear ambulances driving by. So don't get distracted by that, like I just did. Anyway, what do you believe is a key component that has helped you achieve massive results so far this summer?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things, and they all kind of derive from early preparation because I started preparing for this summer back in the fall, which is definitely one of the perks of branching for a second time, is that you have some experience under your belt. But the main thing that I've really been working on all year is creating a vision for our team that's much more clear and cohesive than it may have been in the past. And even though for me that was, having one summer of a vision that maybe wasn't so clear, and then a whole school year to prepare for, a more clear vision, for others it could happen over the course of one summer, which I think is really powerful. So specifically in terms of how I feel that was created, I think it comes down to constant and consistent reflection and visualization. And I think that's such an important tool that we all have, is the ability to really sit down and visualize what you want to create, but not only what it looks like, but also what it feels like in every sense. And I think that's what I mean by saying that the vision is more clear now. It's that, last year we had a CPO goal, and everything that we did was oriented towards selling a certain amount of Cutco. But this year, our goal is so much more meaningful because it's not about sales. Obviously we do ascribe a number to our goals, but it's much more than that. It's much more about impact and legacy and community and development and things like that are more in line with our purpose. So again, even though it took me a whole school year to really, make that transition, I think for many of you, it could happen overnight if you really get clear with yourself and with the people in your circle about what's the most important to you.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Colton. And I want to just kind of dig a little bit deeper on that in particular, because I know sometimes it can be frustrating to hear the same thing over and over again as a branch manager when, you're constantly hearing like, what's your why? What's your reason? What's your mission? And you're like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what my mission is. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. And especially in this time of the year where it's like things are getting crazy and you're like, you know what? I just want to finish the summer. That's my mission. I just want to finish the summer. But it is really valuable when you can prescribe a deeper mission to what you're doing. And I think about, just the overall mission of Vector Marketing. I think one of the missions is that we build leaders here. And so an example about how you can take that mission and apply it to your office. Now, this is just one example. Obviously, I want you to come up with your own mission, what gets you fired up. But with the example of we build leaders here. If I was a district manager, that would be my mission. And whatever I would be doing, I would be looking for ways to elevate other people into leadership positions, knowing that by elevating people into leadership positions, they're ultimately going to sell more, they're going to refer more of their friends, they're going to stay longer, I know that by really focusing on building leaders in my business, everything else I'm trying to do will fall into alignment. So again, like if I'm having conversations with people, knowing my mission in my head, it's just like the law of attraction, right? The law of attraction works because you're constantly looking at the things you want in your life. And by constantly looking at the things you want in your life, like for example, this is my vision board right here. I have all of these different things that every single day. Well, I have on here 50K saved by 2023. So when I'm going out and about and I'm in the process of maybe spending $200 on a couple items of clothing, I can remember that goal of mine and I will decide not to buy it. It's the same thing with your mission. When you have your mission in mind, you're constantly creating conversations that really push people towards the mission that you're going after. I hope that makes sense. It was kind of a roundabout way of explaining it, but Colton, you said that your mission is impact, legacy, community development. How has that mission been reflected in some of the conversations you've had with your people?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to me how you related it to the law of attraction, and I definitely agree with that. I feel like when you have a mission that's clearly in your mind, it manifests itself subconsciously in all of your conversations. And so for us, I mean, when I say legacy, for example, I know that when I'm talking to some of our top people and really trying to develop them, I know that I'm subconsciously thinking about preparing them to, become managers someday. And when I think about, impact, I think consciously and subconsciously when I'm having PCs or serious conversations with people on our team, I'm thinking about their life and not just their work. And with community, community means really actively, becoming involved in volunteering in the community. And like our team is doing community events that we didn't do last year. And so sometimes it's not as subconscious as much as it becomes more of a priority, but that's just as a result of like constantly thinking about the mission and reflecting on it.
Yeah. And just to reiterate that point even more, this is why we always share with all of you that to separate yourself from the CPO goal. Because the minute that your mission is a CPO goal, every single conversation you're having with your people is about that. And that's where burnout happens. That's where people begin to resent you because they think that you're only pushing them for the money. That's when you have CPO goggles on and you're literally looking at your people as dollar signs. And that's not fair, right? You wouldn't have felt good if your manager only looked at you as a dollar sign. You probably wouldn't be here today. So it's removing that desire to have that big CPO goal and replacing it with the desire to make an impact or the desire to, build a community and get out into the community, a desire to leave a legacy or to develop leaders. So just remember that. And again, like Colton said, he took a while to do this. That's one of the benefits of going senior branch. Liz Johns did the exact same thing. She's on the call right now. But you can still do it today. You can still make that shift of like, you know what? I'm done worrying about my 200K CPO goal. What I'm focused on now is developing leaders. What I'm focused on now is bringing people along with me. What I'm focused on now is building a community of young people who want to do something way bigger than they've ever done before. So Colton, moving on to the next question, because it kind of falls into alignment, what advice would you give to a branch who hasn't been seeing the results they want and is feeling a little bit out of touch with their overall mission?
Yeah, I think my opinion is that it's actually totally reasonable to readjust and reflect on your mission statement and work on it again now that you have a different perspective on the business. And I think, many things about branching are very similar to being a sales rep. And one of those things is that your overall experience and perspective on Cutco changes constantly as you experience different things over the course of the summer. And so what your mission statement was coming into the summer, if you had a mission statement, might not be in alignment anymore with what you're hoping to create. Maybe it's a nuanced difference, or maybe it's an entire paradigm shift. But either way, I think it's really important to spend significant time, getting clear with yourself about what's important to you this summer. And then also, pulling people that you feel like are part of your circle of influence and getting in alignment with them too, in terms of what you're hoping to create. Because ultimately we are a reflection of our circle of influence.
Yeah, it's a great answer. Thank you for that, Colton. Okay, so yesterday when we were talking about just this whole idea of having a mission and getting people excited about something way bigger than themselves. You talked about how that's really helped you drive the PR culture. So can you touch more on exactly how you've leveraged your mission to drive PRs and to drive just building the team in general?
Yeah. I think comparing this summer to last summer, I think that whenever I spoke to the team, whether it's at a team meeting or in training or anything like that, I almost always talked about team goals and team trajectory, but I never really talked about individual goals in terms of what's possible for an individual to create. And what's interesting is that now that this summer I've spent more time discussing what one person is possible, can possibly do over the course of just the summer, it's actually created more of a team buy-in because each person feels like they have a role. Because what happens otherwise, if I only talked about, the team goals and our team aspirations, is that then a sales rep either thinks that they are contributing at a massive level or they're not important to the team. And it's important to keep in perspective that everyone on your team has a role. And, for us, I'm constantly relating our team to a sports team. And on a sports team, you have star players and you have bench warmers and you have a ton of role players. And that's how Cutco branches too, is you have people that play their role and contribute at their level. And that's what being a sales rep in Cutco is all about. And I always explain, I'm not looking for you or a person in general to sell a specific amount of Cutco this summer. I'm really looking for you to meet and exceed your expectations and have a really good experience so that you can go out next summer, whether it's in or out of this business, and do great things that reflect really well on your time here with me this summer. And so I just try to keep that in perspective, that what they're doing has value to our team. And also, and it helps them enjoy it more because they feel important. And then in terms of creating a PR culture, it starts with, manager recruits. So the bulk of our CPO is from either my recruits or our assistant managers' PRs. But then what we're really getting intentional about is rep-driven PRs. And there's a few different strategies that I could dive into for how we've created a rep-driven PR culture. But the impact of it is that people have a lot more fun, around the office. People are much more inclined to come to events and register for conferences. And I think they're definitely more motivated to sell because, they're relating it not only to what their goals are, but also to how it impacts the team.
Great. So a couple questions on what you just said, Colton. When you say that you have moved from the team goal to individual goals, now the individual goals, are these kind of figured out during one-on-one conversations, or how do you take, like, let's say you were having a PC with me and you found out that my goal this summer was to be promoted to assistant manager and to sell $10,000. Would that be something that you found out during a one-on-one conversation, or when would you find that out?
Yeah, it would be during a one-on-one conversation. A lot of times I'll pull people aside during team meetings for a PC or schedule a PC during the week. And just to kind of clarify what I mean about individual goals, it's not so much CPO goals. I had a really cool conversation this weekend with Ben Skemper, who used to work with, he's a legend in Cutco. And he talked to me about, if you want to create short-term action and you want to inspire people to take action in the short term, they must first have a really clear picture of what they want long-term. And so whenever I'm having one-on-one PCs with anyone on our team, I'm trying to talk with them about, what they want to create in the big picture, and then how can this summer play into that. So I try to help them visualize, a couple years down the road, when you look back at your 2019 summer with Cutco, how do you feel like that experience helped shift you and change you into the person that you've become in, 2023, 2025, in whatever it is that you really want to do. So that way you have more leverage and influence whenever you're talking to that person for the rest of the summer, because they know that you're in alignment with what they want to do long term, and that's something that's subconsciously far more important to them than sales.
Cool. I love that question. How do you want this summer to help shift you as a leader? Is that the question you asked? That was a really, really powerful question.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that reminds me of something that Nick Hankel had mentioned at the Midwest kickoff conference this past year, where he said, it was in like a breakout, and he had mentioned that, the 25-year-old version of yourself is going to thank you for working so hard today. And that's a good reminder that we can give to our sales reps as well. It's like, hey, listen, I know that to you right now, this might just feel like sell knives, and it might not feel like it's that impactful, but I just want to help you see and help visualize how the decisions you're making now can drastically impact your future later in the most positive way that possible. That's a really great question, Colton. Now, you did mention some rep-driven PR strategies. I know a lot of the people on this call would probably appreciate you giving some of those strategies. So can you share a little bit about those as well?
Sure. It starts in training for sure. For me, it actually starts on day one, and I'm constantly name dropping and kind of planting the seed for who has been personally recruited. And I'm a personal recruit myself, and I'm sure many of you are too. So I always talk about that story and how the person that recruited me wasn't even somebody that I knew very well. So that way, like, their initial perception of the business from day one of training is that PRs are normal and it doesn't need to be your best friends. And then over the course of training, I talk more and more, whenever we have training stop-bys or whenever I'm talking about a rep, I talk about how they found out about the job if they're a PR. So by the time day 3 name collection comes around, they've already heard probably 10 to 20 times about stories of personal recruits. So when I do day 3 name collection, when the PR app was down this weekend, they were still like really eager to send me contacts like manually, which kind of showed me that the way that I've been talking about PRs and training has been working. And then the day 3 name collection, I just watched the Brian Hurlman and Andrew Evans videos, which really helped me a lot to get more names. But then for rep driven, it's mostly at team meetings. What I do is I pull aside people in groups of 2 to 5 people. And what I do is if we have multiple people from the same high school or the same sports team or the same friend group or anything like that, I'll pull them aside together and I'll say, hey, just so you know, you've recruited 1 person. You haven't recruited anybody yet. You've recruited 2 people. Who else do you guys know that you think would be really fun to work with? And here are the prizes if you're able to recruit, 1 or 2 more people. And I go through, like, for us, it's a 1, 3, 5, 7 prize level for PRs. Other offices might do a 2, 4, 6, 8 or something like that. And that way I kind of open the dialogue with them together to talk about people that they would want to work with. And then once they come up with an informal list of 4 or 5 names of friends that they'd want to work with, I just put a competition on, and I'm like, the first person to put me in touch with that person gets credit for being their recruiter. So then they're like calling them right away and texting them right away and trying to get me in touch with them ASAP. And I think it kind of makes it fun too, because they're like competing, to talk to their friends and like they're having fun with it. And I think that's part of like our rep driven culture.
Awesome. I love that. That's really, really cool. Okay. So let's kind of move away from this whole talk about the mission and the PRs, and let's focus on standards in your office. So I know a lot of people on this call probably have at least 10 people in their office, maybe a little bit less, probably more. And it can get to the point now in the summer where you're like, okay, I've got my team. I'm excited about them, but my standards could be higher. They could be producing more. And I want to hear, because I know you have a really healthy culture within your office. And part of that has to do with the mission and the PR culture, but another part of it has to do with the standards you hold your reps to. Because when they're selling or when they're team building or when they're showing up on time, that just naturally creates a healthier culture. So can you touch on like the standards that you set for your reps? When do you bring them up? How do you implement them? And how do you keep them?
Yeah, I think the first part of standards is the way that you frame things. And for me, I like to frame things as being incredibly difficult and challenging, because most things are. And so that way when a rep sets a goal or, it says they want to sell 10K in their fast start or whatever the case is, I really encourage them to think about how difficult that goal is and how challenging it is so that they understand, the work that needs to go in. And then in terms of like production and kind of making sure that people are aligned with their goals, it's a couple things. Number one is the biggest standard that we have, meaning the part of our office that I talk about the most, is driving meeting attendance. And I think that is so important, because if people are coming to we do a twice a week team meeting, but either way, if people are coming to the team meeting, they're more engaged, they're more involved, you have more opportunity to have influence on them. You can have one-on-one conversations with them. And what I've noticed is that people that do come to team meetings typically hold themselves accountable far more than people who don't, and those people might need a lot more accountability from the manager. So driving meeting attendance is like the number one standard. And then if in terms of like lack of demos, like not enough calling and things like that, it's still keeping it in the big picture because most reps don't really want to listen to the manager ask them to sell more just for the sake of selling more. Because the reps feel like, why does the manager care what I sell if it's about my paycheck? But if the manager talks to the rep about how selling so much for the summer, or so much for the push, or so much for the week can create the summer that they want to play into the bigger picture that they said that they wanted before, then the rep remembers that the manager actually cares about them and understands what needs to happen for that to be created. And then in terms of like basic accountability, for me, it's, hey, text me when you've booked up demos and what day they're booked for. And some people don't necessarily like that accountability, but many people on our team who really do appreciate it, and they'll go home and text me saying like, book June 23rd, book June 24th, and I can put it straight into web PDI, and then they like are held accountable to keep phoning because they know that I know when they book.
Great. That's great. I love the reminder that driving demos is still in the bigger picture. So I think, the basics of PDI is to drive meeting attendance and drive demos. But if we're just focusing on those two things, we tend to get into the position where we're driving production for the sake of the CPO, not for the sake of the individual goal. And so that's really, really valuable to remember. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. Now, I know, Colton, one of the things that you're really strong at this summer and even last summer is the Fast Start program. I mean, you've had 5 10K Fast Starters so far this summer. So can you walk us through your beliefs surrounding the Fast Start program and some of the things that you emphasized during the Fast Start talk itself?
Yeah. I talk about the Fast Start briefly in the interview and then in depth in day 1 of training. And the way that I talk about it in training, I don't talk about prizes or promotions or anything like that specific to the Fast Start on day 1. I save that for later in training. So day 1, all I'm telling them is it's a 10-day contest, and then I sell the benefits of it. And I have a slide with, I don't know, maybe 8 bullet points of the intangible benefits of having a great Fast Start. And I mentioned 10K, but it's not just about 10K. It's about really having, a big Fast Start for whatever that means for you individually. And examples of what those intangible benefits are. So first of all, what it's not Cutco prizes. It's not income. It's more expanding your capacity. It's positively changing your self-image and what you think you can do. It's having an impact on the office on other people on the team, even those that have yet to start. It's proving it to your friends. It's proving it to your family, and it's proving it to yourself that you can be successful here. It's how it'll shape your resume for career development and how it'll make you a stronger candidate for future jobs and internships. It can set you up for management promotions, or at least to get on that track. So there's all of these benefits that come from having a big Fast Start that we often don't talk about because we get so caught up in the Cutco prizes and the income and the fancy dinner and stuff like that. But that's all just icing on the cake. And the reason I know that is because when I was pushing in my Fast Start, I didn't care about that stuff at all. I cared about hitting a goal because I wanted to prove it to myself that I could hit it. And I think that's what most people care about when they're going for a big Fast Start. So I try to get really aligned with that on day 1 of training.
I love it. So then when you do the actual Fast Start talk, which is usually day 3, right? Or is it day?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So here on day 2, I go over the specific prizes. And when I do that, I don't just talk about 10K because I've already kind of sold them on 10K in a way. But what I do is I talk about the different important levels. And it doesn't really matter which levels you mark as particularly important. But I think what's important is that you have some. And so what I mean by that is like I have them put a star next to 2,500, right? And yours can be different. But for me, I put 2,500 because that's the Petite Santoku. And then I sell them on why the Petite Santoku is important. So now I'm doing the tangible benefits, right? Intangible benefits first because start with why. And now I'm doing like the physical benefits of having pieces of Cutco to show on your demos. So they don't know much about the Petite Santoku, which is kind of good because you can explain like how incredible it is and how it's going to help them sell signature sets and stuff like that. And you're also doing the names and uses for the Petite Santoku, which helps. Then when I get to, I think 4,500 is Hardy Slicer. So then I go crazy about the Hardy Slicer because it's my favorite knife, and same thing with signature sets. And then I do the same thing at 7,500, I believe, is the carving set. I don't have the sheet in front of me, but the carving set is great because you finish off your homemaker, which is really important. And then I talk about 10K again. So it's kind of letting them know that like 10K isn't the only important fast start, because otherwise what happens is if a rep is not close to 10K and they're on day 7, 8, 9, 10 of their fast start, they kind of give up on themselves, or they could. And so you want to kind of keep it in perspective of that you can have a successful fast start without selling $10,000 or X dollars, right? You can still hit a really important goal. And then on day 3, I talk about 10K stories. So I kind of go back to why, and I bring up, I have a list of like the 10K club of like everyone in our district actually, which is valuable for all branches, is because maybe we don't have so many 10K fast starters, but we can have stories of people in our district or even people in our division that have hit 10K fast start in the past couple summers. And if we're not familiar with those stories, then it's on us to do research and reach out to those people and find out not only what happened to create their 10K fast start, but also how it helped them do things in the future. So I go up and down the list of about 10 people and I say, how did they hit their fast start? Like in terms of like how hard were they working, who was mentoring them, etc. And then what did they do afterwards in and out of the business if I know that much about them? And so that way they're like, oh wow, I want to be part of the 10K club. And so that's kind of the note that we end on in training. And then on the day 3 PC, so on the last day of training, when I ask them if they have a fast start goal, it's different than last summer when I asked, what is your fast start goal? Because then it's forcing them to pick a number. And I actually don't think they need to pick a number right away. I think if there's a number that's particularly exciting to them or particularly inspiring, whether it's 10K or 5K or whatever it is, then I'm absolutely going to support them on it, right? After I challenge them to sell me on why I should believe they can do it, then I'm going to support them on it because I'm going to believe in them too. But if they don't have a specific number in mind, I'm not going to feed them one because then it's more important to me than it is to them. So I wait until advanced training when I can PC with them again, now that they have 2 days of demos. For us, we do AT1 on day 3 of their fast start. So now that they have 2 days of demos under their belt and they have a better perspective on the job, now I'm reassessing their fast start goal. And then I ask them to sell me on it again. And once they sell me on it, I give them my full support and belief that they can hit it.
So then on day 3, when you're having the day 3 PC, and you're talking about goals, so do you not talk about goals at all during the day 3 PC, or is it more so, hey, how many demos do you want to do this weekend? How do you help them maximize their schedule for the first 3 days of their fast start?
Yeah, I don't do tangible goals on the day 3 PC in terms of like demos booked. I do that on like day 2 before we phone. Or like as they start phoning, I go around to each person and I have them like put in their demo slots in their manual calendar. But on the day 3 PC, it's still the intangible goals because that's what I want, like the taste in their mouth when they leave training about what they got from the 3 days. I want them to remember what they wanted to get out of it in the first place. And so even though we've been talking about for 3 days at that point, you know, what they want to get out of the job from an intangible perspective, that's what I go back to in the day 3 PC. And I say, now that you've had a couple of days of training and that you understand the job a little bit better than before, what do you really want to get out of it now? What would be a win for you at the end of the summer? And how can your fast start help create that? And that's where they have a chance to tell me, like, I really want a 10K fast start. Or they're like, or maybe they don't have a specific number, and that's okay too.
Okay, cool. Now, you also mentioned to me a big difference from last summer to this summer, where last summer when you would talk to people, about 75% of your training group would say, I want to go after a 10K fast start. And I know many of the people on this call have probably experienced, you know, sales reps getting so fired up at the 10K fast start and then selling like $600 in their fast start. And there's been points where I know, and I dealt with this myself when I was a branch, where people would get fired up about this 10K fast start, so they want to go after it. And you as a manager really kind of know that that's probably not in the cards for them. So you mentioned like an interesting shift in perspective at the 10K fast start. Can you share this with the group?
Yeah, I think because the 10K fast start is so cool and so exciting, I think as managers we kind of forget on how difficult it is. And if you've had a big fast start, whether it's 10K or something else, you remember how challenging those 10 days were. And so, although we spend significant time selling the benefits of the fast start, we also need to sell the difficulty so that the reps understand exactly, how hard they're going to need to work to make that a reality. And then on the day 3 PC, when they say I want to have a 10K fast start or whatever the case is, I'm asking them to sell me on why they can do it. And oftentimes they don't sufficiently sell me on it, and I don't really have conviction that they can do it, and I tell them that. And I think that's where it's so important, to help them, that we need to be transparent and say, hey, just so I believe you're capable of doing this, but I don't think you're there right now. You don't have enough demos booked, and you don't have enough names on your names, or whatever the case is, right? And you're saying, here are the steps that you need to take, and then you give them an action plan and say, buy advanced training on Monday, take these actions, X, Y, and Z, come back to me on Monday and sell me on why you can have a 10K fast start. And then I'm going to map out with you how we're going to hit that.
Cool. I love how you mentioned the action plan thing. Because it's one thing to be like, you can't do this. Like, this is not in the cards for you. If you stop there, then that's not doing your job as a leader, and it's not empowering. But if you take that extra step and say, hey, listen, here's what needs to happen in order for you to hit a 10K faster. I'm not telling you it's impossible. I'm telling you that what you have going on for you right now is going to make it very difficult for you to reach a 10K fast start. And I want to see you do that, but we need to create a better action plan. So here's what you need to do between now and advanced training. When you come back to advanced training, that's when we'll reevaluate where you are, and we'll create an action plan for the next 3 days and the next 3 days. And that's another good point that I want you to bring up, Colton. You talked to me about how you manage your people. So this is both in the fast start and outside of the fast start. I'm a really big proponent of managing in short spurts, not overwhelming somebody by looking at their entire week or 2 week or month schedule. So can you touch on how you kind of focus on the short stints of time?
Yeah. I think I learned this from the interview when I was interviewing people, and I started asking, like, what have you done in the past 2 years and the next 2 years? And then when I'm talking to a rep about their sales or whatever it is, I talk about, what have you done the past 2 or 3 days, and what do you want to do the next 2 or 3 days? And I just think keeping it in those shorter windows makes it much more attainable. At least it feels more attainable to them, because they're not overwhelmed with big picture, right? So they have the big picture in their mind, but now it's not overwhelming them. It's just motivating them to take action in the short term, because that's what they ultimately have the most control over. Isn't what they're going to sell the rest of the month. It's what they're going to sell the next 3 days. And that way you can get a specific action derived from that conversation, which is usually, I'm going to phone tonight for 45 minutes and I'm going to text you the results. And if that's how you can end every PDI call, you're going to be in really good shape. If your reps actually text you when they book up demos that night, and they're booking up demos for the next 3 days to hit the goals they told you for those 3 days, then you start building a lot of momentum. And that's how reps start to get self-motivated and holding themselves accountable.
Yeah. And one thing that just popped into my head when you were saying that, Colton, is that when you keep action in 2 to 3 day spurts, you eliminate procrastination. Because if you're looking at this in a week-long basis and they say, oh, well, I want to do 10 demos this week, well, it's really hard to motivate them to get into action on Monday when they have all week to do 10 demos. When you focus on 2 to 3 day stints, you really help manage that immediate action, that urgency. So that's just something, another reason why that's so valuable. So yeah, I love that too. Okay. So my next question is kind of based on what you just said. So if you feel like you've already answered it, totally fine. But beyond the fast start, how do you manage reps to their goals?
Yeah, I think the one thing to re-stress is team meeting attendance. And then the other part about team meeting attendance is that I always want post-fast start people to talk to current fast start people, both in the group setting, speaking at the team meeting and giving them 5 or 10 minutes to really give like a short message on how their fast start went, so that way they feel, valuable and important. But then also connecting people one-on-one, right? When we break at the team meeting and start phoning, I connect the post-fast startees to the current fast startees. And then when they leave team meeting, they're so much more inspired and motivated about their role on the team. And I do that at every team meeting. Even if someone's like 3 weeks out of their fast start, I still ask them to talk to the new people, because every single time it means more and more to them, I think.
Yeah. And that's really in alignment with your mission overall, right? Of creating impact and legacy. And, what you're doing is elevating leaders. And the more you elevate your people to become leaders, the more tied in they become, because now there's a deeper reason why they're here, because they are becoming mentors to the younger people or the newer people on the team. And that's a valuable have. And for a lot of people, this is their first experience of really being a mentor. There doesn't need to be, sales attached to it. If someone's done 25 demos and they're consistently showing up, and may not be at 10K in sales, but they can still provide some insight and still provide just some help for people. So I think that's really, really great too. So then so this is kind of just a total shift away from just the actual day-to-day management of your people and the fast start management. But obviously, having been so successful so far, you've had multiple 10, 20, 30, 40K weeks now. I think your very first week out the door was 10K. What is your planning process behind putting together big weeks? And then what advice would you give to a branch that is planning their first 10 or 20K week?
So a couple things. Number one is that your perspective, this is the advice part, your perspective on what's possible or realistic will continue to shift every day and every week for the rest of your summer and branching experience. And what I mean by that is, like, when I first open a branch, or when you first open a branch, it may have been something like, getting 5 orders your first week, right? And then it was like getting 10 orders in a week or 20 orders in a week. And then over time, it might become something like getting 5 orders in a day, or 10 orders in a day, or 20 orders in a day. So my point there is that it's so important to take things step by step and to build from the ground up, and not get overwhelmed with setting a big weekly goal as much as setting an orders per day, and just breaking it down really, really small into what you have the most control over. The other thing is breaking down, what days do you typically get the most orders or the most CPO, and then being transparent about that with your team. So for me, it's at our team meetings. I do a quick slideshow. It doesn't take too long, but it's just a slideshow about our team's trajectory. And I just talk about, what we did each week for May. Now it's what we've done the past, week or two of June, and then what I think we can do next week. And then I talk about, in order to do this CPO or the CPO range for next week, here's the order range that would require. And based on the people in this room, here's how many orders per person it would take. So my question for you is that would that number of orders be something where you want to be, average on the team and play your role and hit that number? Would you want to put the team on your back and double that number? Or do you have a really busy week, and can you be transparent about that so that we can set our goals accordingly as a team? So that way everybody is like in line with what our team is trying to do. And then I request help for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And I say, like, whenever I'm talking to reps, I say, hey, as you know, we typically do really well on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, actually. But Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we often have dips in our number of orders. Do you think you might be able to help us out and get some demos in for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? And they're usually like, yeah, I can do 2 or 3 demos. And then on Saturday, we have like some pop from the training class. And then I always stress that Sunday and Monday are the biggest days, because it's the end of the week, it's the end of your fast start, or end of your push goal, or whatever it is. And then we explode on Sunday and Monday every week, and we typically match what we do Tuesday through Saturday. So I just get the team in alignment with what we can do and what we normally do, so that way they understand what their role is on the team for that week.
Yeah, I love what you just said about that, because what you're really doing is you're partnering with your team. You use the word transparent a lot. You're giving people the inside look at what it takes to create a big week. And I've shared this with some of you in the past where, we know the vector metrics is 4 people on the newsletter equals 10K in sales. And so even bringing that up to your team and letting them know, hey guys, so, I know this might not make sense to you right now, but the vector truth is that for every person we have in the newsletter, it usually means 2.5K in sales. So we're going after 10K week this week, and what we need to have happen is we need 4 people to step up and be on the newsletter. So who of those people are going to step up, and helping them see that it is a team effort. And I love the way that you phrase it, Colton. That's a really brilliant way of breaking down day to day and understanding the fluctuations and the cycles of the week, but also saying, hey, here's the average orders, and who feels like they can just hit the average, who feels like they can double the average, and who feels like this week's really crazy and can just own up to the fact that they're probably not going to be able to do as much as they would like to do. And again, partnering with your team is so valuable because you're not in it alone. You have your team together, and when you can kind of just put it out on the table and say, listen, we're doing this together. I'm going to do my part, and I'm looking for people to do their part. And I'm looking for people to step up and to play the role that really will get us that next level. And so much of being a manager is being transparent with your team, being open, communicating effectively, communicating honestly. And it doesn't have to be like a show every week. It can just be like, hey guys, here's what we're going after. Here's what it takes. Here's what I need. Here's who needs to step up. And just kind of, again, it's the baseball analogy. You put people in the lineup who are going to hit a home run or who have potentially hit a home run, but you also put people in the lineup who might just have an RBI or something like that. So understanding that every single person can play some kind of role, even if that role does not happen to be with sales. I think I shared this with Liz before, but when you're getting people excited about a big team goal, if you have people on your team who they're not heavy hitters from the sales department, obviously still help them set some kind of sales goal so they're doing some kind of producing, but you can also talk about, hey, part of setting up for a big week is getting a big training class. And I know you have friends that would be great to be in this office. So who can we get in for the interview tomorrow so they can be in training by Thursday? And you give people responsibilities that still play into the overall goal of having a really successful week. Even if people are not heavy hitters in the sales field, they can still come in and do a training stop by. They can still come in and help people get excited about role playing and dropping down, those kinds of things. So just know that every single person on your team has some kind of strength that you can amplify to really help push your team towards those bigger numbers. And when you really play to people's strengths, that's when you always win. Cool. Colton, do you have anything else that you want to share before we head into the Q&A section?
Quick, just 2 quick tips. So number 1 is trust your gut and your instinct. It typically will lead you to a really good spot, and that's part of why you were asked to be a branch manager in the first place. And then the second thing is one of my big themes is don't be afraid to be friends with your reps if you feel like that's the right thing to do. Is I love the people on our team, and I think it's important to be comfortable with them and not hang out with them necessarily, but just being friendly with them and knowing about their life and being able to tease them and have fun with them and stuff like that.
Cool. All right. Awesome. All right, guys. So for the last 15 minutes here, I'm going to open it up to Q&A for Colton. Oftentimes when I open up the floor for Q&A, it's kind of just crickets, but you have the #1 branch manager in the country sitting here right in front of you, ready to give you his attention. So I would really like to see people asking questions. So that being said, Liz, we'll go over to you.
Hey, Colton. Thanks for sharing everything. This has been awesome. So I just had a question. I don't know if you know how to answer this, but I'm on 2-day training in my office, and most of Hoosier is. So I was wondering if you had any insight or even just an idea of how to incorporate that, those different fast start conversations, or where to incorporate them in 2-day training rather than having those 3 days. And I totally understand you're not on 2 days, so if you don't know, that's fine. I just figured I would ask.
No, it's definitely a fair question. I think the important thing to remember is the order of which that you talk about your fast start and the process of it. And so that means starting with the why and those intangible benefits, and maybe that's all of day 1, and then maybe day 2 early in the day you're going into the what, in terms of, what are the prizes, what are the outcomes, what is the income, stuff like that. And then at the end of day 2, I would probably go back to the why and talk about the stories of 10K fast starters. And I think that's like the one thing that all of you have a lot of control over, is proactively seeking 10K fast start stories from around, your office, your district, your division, your region, and then, learning about them and sharing them with your team, or even having those people come in and speak or Zoom in and speak about their stories. So I think maybe that would be the thing I would end with on day 2.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Cool. Who else has a question? Feel free to just unmute yourself and begin talking.
I have a question. Sure.
All right. Cool.
So for the Fast Start prizes, are you excited when you go over the prizes? I know you said like you yourself wasn't really excited as a trainee to hear about them, but I feel like I get really excited about the prizes, and I try to go over names and uses, but maybe I'm like overselling it. Like, how do you get excited about it?
Yeah, I think it's just important to remember that like everyone is motivated by different things, and like even though for me personally, it like the intangible benefits clicked with me, and like that's what motivated me. I also know that there have been people on our team, even big fast starters, that really wanted Cutco prizes. That were like, I really actually want a homemaker set for my life. So for me, it's like I manufacture energy in general when I do training, because I'm naturally not that necessarily the highest energy person, but in training I like give so much energy, and especially for the fast start prizes, and especially for those 3 levels that I think are really important, right? So for me, it's like I don't go crazy over all the prizes, but for the Petite Santoku, the Hardy Slicer, and finishing the Master Carver set, I go like nuts on those. And I ask everyone to hype up like how important the Petite Santoku is, the Hardy Slicer or whatever, so that way they like, when they leave training and they're looking at their fast start goals, they remember like how happy they will be when they get to 2,500, 4,500, or 7,500.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question too. I know you're someone who has a good show, to the last day of training, and I feel like I've been struggling with that, having a 2-day training where I'd have, a decent amount in on day 1, like maybe something like 12 and only 4 come back day 2. What are some things that you feel like contribute to you having a good show to the last day of training?
Sure. I'm glad you brought it up, because we haven't talked about it yet, and I think it's something that a lot of people have asked me about. And the only thing that I think has really made a difference this summer for our office is that in day 1 of training, starting in the welcome talk, really starting in the interview, but in the welcome talk, I spend a lot of time talking about career development and how these skills you can develop as a sales rep can really impact your resume and your career path. Because ultimately, I think that's what the majority of college students are concerned with and think about. And so I'm totally selling on just going through this training, how important that is for your future. And also, like when I talk about the demo before we even role play, I deliver on that promise, right? Because it's one thing to say that we're going to teach you sales skills during training, but then we want to make sure that we actually are. And so I actually like try to teach the psychology of the demo, the 7 steps of an effective sales presentation, why our script is in the order that it's in, why we say certain lines, why certain lines are more important. And all those tips are really relevant, because then when they go home on day 1 and they talk to their parents and their parents are like, oh, did you get anything out of that? Then they can really be like, yeah, I got this out of it. And so that's why, the last thing is before they leave training on day 1, I think it's important to have some kind of roundtable discussion of what did you get out of today, and like how do you feel like that's going to be helpful for you. So that way when their parents ask them, they know already what they want to say, and then they show up to day 2.
Okay, thank you. Would you just ask, like, what did you get out of today to the people who are coming to the breakfast club, or just the whole training class?
I would do it to the whole class. I think at the beginning of day 1, like probably halfway through my welcome talk, I do an activity where each person writes down 1, what skills are you looking to develop this summer? 2, how will these skills benefit you in your future? And 3, rank these factors in terms of rate these motivating factors for how important they are to you between experience, advancement, I think, yeah, experience, advancement, achievement, and income. And then I have the whole group share. And like, we don't actually usually have very large training classes, so we are able to share as like a whole group, which is kind of nice. And then at the end of day one, I talk about, remember what you wrote down earlier, and now let's have a discussion, go around and say, what did you end up getting out of today, and why do you think that's important?
That's a really good point, Colton. And just to kind of jump off of that, that is a point that psychologically helps people develop a deeper meaning and a deeper relationship to the training right from the start. When you ask that kind of question, there's like a quote that says, the people who get the farthest in life are not the ones that have the most knowledge, but the ones that ask the right questions. This is a perfect example of that. Those questions that he asks in the beginning of training, they force people to all of a sudden put a deeper meaning to their training. So they might be coming in there not really knowing that there is a deeper meaning behind all of this. When you ask those questions, you are now forcing them to think, oh, maybe there is a deeper meaning why I'm here. And then when you do the group share, you get to hear that other people have deeper meanings, and it just creates like a stronger culture right from the start. And then Colton, it's really smart that he actually has people share, because now he is, again, kind of going back to the mission in itself, like he knows these things that people are trying to get out of the training. So he's able to add certain aspects or just emphasize certain aspects of the training that he knows will make good on what his people are looking to get out of it. And then ending day one on a group discussion of, hey, what did you get out of today? Again, it not only reinforces the meaning behind it, but it gives them ammunition in a way when their parents say, hey, how did you do? Or what tell me about today? They can go home like, yeah, so today, like I learned all about like, healthy communication 101, or I learned about the 7 steps of a sale. And these are things that parents want to hear. They want to hear that it's not just about the knives, that it's about the actual people that they're becoming in the process. And that's another good point, Colton, that you made about the career development aspect. I think one of the areas of opportunity that we have as a company in whole is just this idea of understanding our target market better. In today's time, minimum wage is so high that people aren't necessarily looking for the money anymore. They could go and work at Acme and make $15 an hour. But what is it about working at Cutco that's going to separate them from their peers? It is that career development. They could do a lot of different things that Cutco used to sell people on, but no longer have the leverage to do that because minimum wage being so high, it's not really the $18 per appointment is not the selling point anymore. But when you can really connect them to, hey, listen, like you having this on your resume when you graduate from college, you'll be the one who has to tell companies to stop calling you and not the other way around. So remembering that is a huge selling point for people is really valuable. Okay, last 5 minutes here. Any other questions that you all have for Colton? Charlie, is that your hand?
Yes, sorry, I can tell if my mute was off. So as far as building a culture around time, like being on time, integrity, like sticking to goals, effort, things like that, how do you develop that in training and like their first team meeting?
Yeah, day one welcome talk. I have a slide for office standards. And it has all those things you talked about, like punctuality and professionalism and dress code and parking even, and respecting the bathrooms in the building, and all that kind of stuff is mentioned in the welcome talk. And when I explain each of those, I get pretty deep into like why it's actually important, because they've been hearing their whole life to be on time. And for a lot of people, it hasn't really like stuck with them. And so when I explain punctuality, for example, I explain like, hey, just so you guys know, and they can see my computer screen because it's like hooked up to the screen or whatever. So I show them my calendar. I'm like, this is what I do on a daily basis. So like if we start something late, this is the impact, right? Then this starts late and this starts late and this person gets kind of screwed over and so on and so forth. So then they realize, and I'm like, today it wasn't a big deal. It was your first day, but tomorrow really try to be here at noon. And then Saturday we have like a divisional Zoom call at 8:30 a.m. And I'm like, if you're not here by 8:30, I'm not going to be able to get the door for you because the door is locked, right? And I'm like, I can't get the door for you because we'll be on the call. So you really try to come by 8:15, 8:20. So that way they get in those standards right away, because if they're late to training, they're going to be late to every meeting for the rest of the summer. But if they're showing up early to training, then they're going to be prepared to, like, you know, that's the norm for all future meetings and events.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
For sure.
Last 3 minutes here. Anyone else? Colton, can you quickly touch on, I don't think you mentioned this yet, and it's just a great point to make, with PDI, holding the standards of PDI. What do you do in training that helps people see the importance of calling in for PDI during their fast start?
Yeah, rep stop-bys is important for sure, you know, and especially if there's a rep who you have been PDIing with consistently, I ask them if they can come stop by training and talk about why PDI has helped them, so that way they know that I'm going to ask them about it. You know, even if there's someone that you do PDI with consistently, but they're not coming into training, I just call them and have them explain during training why PDI is important. And then on day 3, when I'm setting people up for their PDI times, I should go back to day 1 when I explain what PDI is, and I explain it as like the 5-minute call. And I say you're going to be matched on day 3 with your team captain, so me or an assistant manager that you'll be calling every day. But then on day 3, I say I want to be your team captain because I typically work with the top, you know, X% of people on our team, and I really believe that you can be, you know, a great role. You can play like a really significant role on our team. So I want to be partnered with you and coach you. So that even though I know up front that I'm going to be taking their PDI for the majority of people, I still try to make them feel really special about PDI and the fact that I really want to talk to them. And then I explain from day 1 that the standard is they call me, not vice versa. And the reason is really like a simple, friendly reason. It's like, hey, I really value your time, and like I don't want to bother you, and like I don't want to have a conversation that you don't want to have, but I really do feel like it's an important, you know, conversation for us to have every day. So call me at that time and I will provide value so that you'll get better at the job. I can promise you that. Right? So that they call me. And then the last thing is on day 3, I have my Google Calendar open on the screen again so that everyone can see it. And one by one, people slot themselves in so they can see where everybody else's slots are on my calendar between 8 and 10 a.m. for PDI. So that way, and then I reassert, I'm like, just so you know, if you don't call me at that time, like if you call me late, then look what it would do to Sam, right? Or look what it would do to Joe, because then they would also be pushed back. And then everyone's schedule gets a little bit, you know, messed up in the morning. And then the last thing is I share it with them on a Google Calendar invite to repeat daily for their first 10 days. So that way it's like shows up on their calendar every morning so that they remember to call me at that time.
Yep. So just to reiterate, because I know we got one minute left here, basically. Colton has people actually pick specific times within that PDI window. So if your PDI window is from 8 to 10 or 9 to 11, he has his people literally say, okay, I'm going to call you at 9:15 every single morning this week or the first 10 days. And then Colton puts Shelby in at 9:15. And then Charlie, if you're in the training with me, you would say, okay, well, I can't call Colton at 9:15. I can call him at 9:30. Okay, get me in there at 9:30. And so that just shows people that this is something that is expected of every single person. You know, for most people, I don't think the team captain thing is relevant to you because you probably don't have an AM staff. But I do like the phrase that Colton said about, I'm going to partner with you and help you get better at this job. I'm going to be in it with you. So helping them see PDI as a partnership and that you are literally going to be there to help them is really valuable too. It's not a burden, it's a partnership. So I love that. All right, guys, so it's 10:01. Sorry for taking a little bit of extra time, but Colton, I really appreciate you and what you provided to us today. For everyone on the call, I ask this often, and I'm really going to ask this again today because I think it's so valuable that people see they should be watching this call. If you have any takeaways, I know I saw a lot of you taking notes, please comment in the Branch Impact page what like 1 or 2 of your takeaways were, because when I post this video and the recording, I want people to watch it. And if I just post it and they don't see why it's important, it's unlikely that everyone's going to be watching it. But if they see 5 or 6 people saying, oh my God, this call was awesome, I got this much out of it, you guys should definitely be recording. Well, what's that going to do? That's going to encourage people the same way you have someone coming in to talk about PDI. It will encourage them to watch the video. So thank you all. Have a great day. And I will see many of you tomorrow or later on today. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin.